On this trip around the county, we find out how we are all closely connected and how our students and teachers at NHS are coping with their mental health during the pandemic. All of this and more on this trip around the county.
I'm Scroggin.
And I'm Hannah Hyatt. On Around the County, we take you places you may have never been and introduce you to people you may not know.
With the world's population constantly growing, sometimes it feels like we get lost in the shuffle. Sometimes it feels like you're the only one who knows what it's like to feel like a real human. Producer Marissa Perkins finds some strangers to show us that we're not all that different from each other.
Because you don't have to sign or nothing.
Oh, I have no idea. How does one live life to the fullest?
You have to be happy with yourself. No one else can make you happy. People can't make you happy. Money can't make you happy. You got to make yourself happy.
Get up every morning and have a positive outlook on life and try to put a smile on your face and make the person that you run into smile.
There are over 7 billion people on this earth, and each and every one of them are fantastic and unique in their own ways. Something that unites all of us is that we all want to live a good life, but what constitutes as a good life is different in each of us. So I talked to some strangers.
The way to live life to the fullest is to not be grumpy in the morning on a Monday morning.
Yeah, not waiting for Friday to happen just to be thankful that you're
just like be present.
Yeah.
By working hard for the things that they want and they want to achieve, and I think that's mostly it. Just working hard for what you want and then doing that.
Love. Love can be wonderful and love can be terrible. Always expect the unexpected. But you gotta love yourself first. That's the most important thing. If you can love yourself, then everything else will fall into place.
Independence is a really good thing. And being able to move out and have your own place, it's such a good feeling, and I think people should be proud of themselves when they're able to do that, because they worked for it. So.
The nature that surrounds us also has a profound effect in our lives.
My favorite things in life are the animals, the flowers. I love the water, the oceans, the lakes. I love everything about nature.
I like going on trail walks and stuff, and just being outside when it's nice outside. It's nice to see all the colors, and it just gives you a good feeling.
Something else that seems to unite us is the hope for this pandemic to be over.
I hope that I like 2021 better than 2020.
Yeah, definitely.
Hopefully it'll be better than last year, because that was awful for everybody.
I hope this virus goes away quickly. All forms of it.
I predict, hopefully, that this year will be a better year and people are more positive, I guess.
We also all seem to have a common message.
Be yourself. Always be yourself. Don't try to be anyone else. Just be yourself.
Probably just stay true to myself and don't try to change myself just because of other people.
As corny as it is, just be yourself, and if you don't like who you are, then you have the ability to change that.
COVID-19 has impacted all of us. It's taken a major toll on everyone's mental health and has caused problems with normal daily tasks. Producer Hannah Kincaid takes a closer look on how it has impacted Noblesville's very own teachers, counselors, and students.
It has been the toughest year for me and a lot of other people, just because everyone's juggling school and work and their life, their family, everything. Everyone is going through like their own little thing, and sometimes school can be very overwhelming.
You know, it's been really interesting reformatting and reinventing pretty much every single lesson and every single lab experiment, the labs in particular. But so as a teacher, just rethinking what I know to do for the last over a decade into this new paradigm of students not in the room with me.
There's definitely higher stress levels, and I think surrounding a variety of things. So stress with schoolwork, and then just even with schoolwork, I think we've seen a lot of students struggle more academically than what we normally have. And when you're not in the classroom, I know teachers and students are doing their best with the hybrid model. And I think it's probably going as well as it can be going, but I know it's definitely something that's been difficult on everybody involved. And then I think just stress surrounding the pandemic, we see that. So, students worried about being safe or their families being safe has been something we've seen. And then the kind of lack of being able to be social with students, I think, has really affected them.
I mean, adding in attendance, there's a lot of students that are struggling with attendance, don't want to come to school. And another big concern is what we don't know, what's going on with students, because they aren't in the building and things are going on that in a normal year we would have found out and been able to help support the family and the student, but this year we never even told about it because there's never been a chance to have that conversation.
I think that it's interesting to see students readjusting to their smaller social groups, and that I actually see them perhaps becoming tighter knit with the ones that the other students they have access to. But then there's still that side where I see students struggling with, they'll hear a name oh yeah, I haven't seen that person in over a year. Yeah. I definitely see some students who are surprisingly thriving in this, and some students that it's just taking a huge hit. And that's really heartbreaking to see students that just aren't getting past that new weirdness that is this world right now, and getting assignments done and stuff. And that part really breaks my heart.
Sometimes going into school, it's you're just there and you're dang, I don't want to be here. I need a mental break. And yes, you get the weekend, but it's still, school is very overwhelming. Assignments are not going to be taken away because you're sad or because you're going through something. You have to balance them, and for a lot of people that is what is so hard.
And it's across the board, counselors, teachers, students, everything there is to keep track of this year. It has been really stressful. And then I think also doing everything, there's so much being done electronically now, and I think it just gets overwhelming and it gets to be overload.
One thing that I would say to teachers is I know a lot of your students are probably not doing as well as you want them to, not responding to your emails, not doing the work that they normally have in past years. And that's because everyone is going through such a weird time in their life and such a weird season that obviously we will get through, but it is having a toll on everyone.
Just back to this place where there's so much going on in this world that we all have to deal with. And I'm just kind of wait, can we go back to that time where it was just slow and we could take it easy? Not that I'm saying I want to be back to being confined to my house with no social interaction, but I really did get a chance to see how much that my specific mental health, and I would assume generally everyone, is taking a hit from just how fast-paced society is.
And I think for students, I think the big thing is being comfortable with asking for help. So it's a weird year, you know, if you're struggling with something, an email to your counselor, even if you don't know them, send it, forget it, and then we're gonna come and we're gonna help you out.
As far as mental health goes, I know some people don't believe that it exists, but for teenagers, it definitely does. It's definitely a real thing.
It's certainly been helpful to me to think about gratitude. I would say to all of the students, be they Alpha, Charlie, Bravo, Delta, or Foxtrot, like, we have a mechanism to connect with other humans on a regular basis. Some of us in person, some of us, Foxtrot, like only digitally, but still, that's something. And so I think being able to really pause to consider what I can have, what I can share gratitude for, helps. And so I would encourage everyone else to just take a moment of gratitude.
The hybrid schedule, you know it, you love it, but is that true for everyone? Producers Trace Downs and Carter Maskimovich take us into NHS for a better perspective on how this change in schedules has affected not only students, but teachers too.
National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. He is on the front lines here in the U.S. response to the coronavirus outbreak. Dr. Fauci, good morning.
When the coronavirus first hit the United States back in early 2020, it left school districts across the nation scrambling to figure out how they could safely yet effectively allow teachers to teach their students. Some schools went back full time, some went every other day, but due to the massive size of Noblesville School District, drafting a safe schedule was complex. Eventually, a temporary solution was put in place, the hybrid schedule. Students were split into two groups, AC and BD, with AC students going Monday and Tuesday and BD students going Thursday and Friday.
Wednesdays are e-learning days, so everyone is at home. With this schedule, the majority of a student's time is spent at home, where they are left sitting in a Zoom class, doing mostly self-led work, and having minimal interaction with the rest of the class. While this was a good solution initially, it left a lot of room for improvement, and according to a majority of faculty and students, it is riddled with downsides.
Learning that we were going hybrid was a bit, I don't know. I was excited for it because we got to go back to school, but at the same time, I didn't even get to see most of my friends because they were in the other group. It was harder for me to learn as I couldn't stay focused online as well as I would be if I was in class.
I feel like there are better things that could have been done to make school more manageable for students. I felt like only being able to see my teachers once a week has kind of made my grades go down in skill-based classes, such like science and math.
The teachers of Noblesville schools have been the lab rats of the hybrid schedule's integration. If anyone knows about what works in the system and what doesn't, it's the teachers.
So this year we've had to do things a little differently. We started by trying to do some synchronous learning, and it was really difficult to do that because we had students doing hands-on work in class, and we had students that were trying to participate in hands-on without having the materials at home. So what we decided to do is switch that up a little bit and have pieces that they could do at home. We would, without needing materials, we would let that be their at-home work, and then when they were at school, we would do the activities that we needed to be around or use materials that we only had available at school.
I'm trying to teach them synchronously or equally, and then I'm trying to engage my students on Zoom with like keeping up with our class and not pretending like, oh, they're not there, or that like, oh, they can do this just on their own. Because in some cases they can't, and in some other cases they just won't do it on their own. So
sometimes I have the people at home and at school doing the exact same thing, and so those at home are trying to follow everything that's happening in class. With a little bit of experience, I've found that that doesn't work particularly well because it's really hard to stare at a Zoom camera for 90 minutes, right?
They see it all firsthand around a diverse group of students who are all handling the situation differently. Unfortunately, when you're one of the first to experiment with something as radical as this, there will be failures.
One of the most important things teachers can be doing for their students is just kind of following up, especially on that at-home work. I've noticed that while I have the students in class, those activities are going well and students are doing them well, but it's the at-home activities that tend to be more difficult as far as completion goes, as far as understanding, and so some of that follow-up helps.
So the most challenging things and the things that haven't worked have been like if I ask the students to do something entirely on their own. So if I don't like have them start the period with me usually, then I have a lot of students who will say, oh, I'm going to get to that later, and then never come back to do the activity. And then the next time I see them in class, they'll be like, oh, I didn't end up doing that.
One thing that becomes really difficult about our labs is that it takes an entire week to run a lab, which means that we really have to limit and make sure we've defined the most essential labs and that we're dropping other labs. I did not want to sacrifice anything. And then finally I had to kind of recognize that in this year there's things that have to be sacrificed in order for at least some learning to happen. The most successful thing is actually more on the teacher end, and that's just figuring out what can you give up. You know, and sometimes we have our favorite things that we don't want to give up, but what can you give up?
Everyone has their own opinions on what works and what doesn't, but there was a general idea that was universal.
One of the things that's important for all of us to know is that teachers are working hard to try and make these learning activities as best as they possibly can be in the situation we find ourselves. So for students, that means recognizing that the teacher is trying to set up something to help you learn the material well, even when you're not in the classroom. And for teachers, that means we recognize that students are probably trying to do their best as well, but there might be barriers getting in the way. And so following up, communicating is the key on both ends in order for this to be a successful year.
There's lots of things for teachers. You've got to be gracious to yourself and gracious to students. Everybody's figuring this out. And the art is figuring out when and how to be flexible and when to not be flexible and try to help students kind of rise to the occasion, you know, and become even more because they're doing it in the year 2020. So
there's a quote from a person that I really like that the quote is that the mind cannot be educated at the expense of the heart. And so I think when we educate hearts first, we do a better job of educating the mind.
That's all for this episode of Around the County. I'm Nina Scroggin.
And I'm Hannah Hyatt. Join us next time for another trip around the county.